Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati. I'd like to welcome today's panelists, Chike Ogea, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State, Professor Anthony Kila, Director, Center for International Advance and Professional Studies, Wale Gomez, Public Affairs Analyst, and of course, Yemi Adomolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to this edition of This Day Live, and I'm glad that we have what looks like a full house with Yemi effectively on the ground. Now, we begin in Nigeria, where the president of the International Committee of the Red Cross has reported that about 22,000 Nigerians have been reported missing in the northeastern region of the country due to a decade of conflict in the area. According to him, the figure is the highest number of missing persons registered with the ICRC in any country. He also said millions of people had also been displaced due to the conflict, and that nearly 60% of the missing Nigerians were minors at the time they went missing. I have a thought on that, but meanwhile, a new report from the New York Times suggests that Nigerian soldiers fighting Boko Haram terrorists in Borno are losing motivation and struggling to match the insurgents' might. The American media company said, contrary to claims of the Nigerian government and the military, that Boko Haram has been degraded. The insurgents' power is growing in parts of the Northeast. According to the report, they're said to operate with more sophisticated weapons, including improved drones, while soldiers struggle to keep up with obsolete weapons and ineffectual strategy. While Nigeria's military says Boko Haram is not in control of any major territory, the newspaper said it lent the insurgents control 4 of the 10 zones in northern Borno State. They are also said to be pulling off almost daily attacks in various parts of the Northeast, particularly in Borno, while the soldiers are often said to run and take cover, as they say in Nigerian English. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, this is a problem. On one hand, Red Cross is saying about 22,000 persons have been displaced. Another account says about 2 million persons have been killed since the crisis began. So many other persons are missing, including minors. We know about Dapchi, we know about Chibok, girls, and yet this problem continues. And then now we hear this story again about the soldiers not being motivated enough, and the Boko Haram soldiers, fighters, insurgents, if you like, terrorists, you know, seemingly having the upper hand. Chike, let me start with you.
Well, if you ask me, I think the pertinent question would be, what has changed? This was the reason why they got rid of the Jonathan government under the anything else but Jonathan cliche would do. And here we are, 5 years after, and we are just going around in circles, as far as I'm concerned. Because you see, I know that being someone that has worked extensively in the media, that they are not even covering what is going on in the Northeast like they should. If they do, and those of us in Lagos are feeling comfortable and happy with ourselves here, realize what is really going on out there, then we'll know that our country is in real trouble. Our military boys, you know, I just doff my hat out to them because they are sons, they are brothers, they are fathers, and I know that they are being killed. Because just like the report either said or suggested, they cannot match the firepower of the insurgents. I don't know where these people are getting their support from, but it is obviously something that is overreaching to whatever we have to offer. And of course, you know, the first part of your intro talked about the kind of displacement that is going on in Nigeria. You know, it makes one almost you know, your heart weep. It's a very terrible situation we are facing. And, you know, something has to give quickly. I've been expecting that the government will come out with a major offensive, either tactical or otherwise, or even through these negotiations, and then we'll be able to get a break from this. But definitely, this cannot continue ad infinitum. When is this going to end?
Yeah, but I mean, the fear is that Red Cross is even talking about 22,000 persons.
Yes,
missing. Perhaps the figure may be more than that. Because this is what Red Cross, is reporting. Yes, Yemi?
No, sorry, I was just going to say that it definitely will be more. And I like the fact that Red Cross was very clear that these were numbers reported to the Red Cross. So this is basically people that we can identify. One of the fallouts from the Bring Back Our Girls campaign was asking the Nigerian government to set up a national missing persons register. And by that, we'll have a sense of who's missing, where did they go missing. If they are found, we can track it and celebrate it. Especially because under the Jonathan administration, what was very popular at the time was to say, oh, we found 400 people. Oh, we found 300 people. And then the question was always, but nobody knew they were missing in the first place. So it was really very hard to juxtapose the pieces of information we were getting. And that's why for the Chibok girls, we've also been very clear that we're not saying they're the only ones missing, but we can actually put names, put ages, put location, we can point at family members, and that we should duplicate that across the country so people can report they're missing. Now, it's taking, I guess, 3 odd years, or 2 years. In fairness, the Office of the Vice President picked it up and they've run with it. They did pilot studies with the Red Cross involved, but it then got stuck because it wasn't budgeted for. So the request, excuse me, at the time was 100 million naira for a pilot, I believe, in 5 states, and that's where it stopped. And for us, we then picked up that as an organization, and we've been tracking missing people that people are sharing online. And in a space of about 6 weeks, we have a record of over 100 people that we've documented, of people who are missing. So that's just us in our space from just online and media reports. Now, that's not talking about people who have been reported to other NGOs or other police. So, and I mean, our sort of, it's not a joke, but the driving theory is that the government is reluctant to push a missing persons register because the numbers will be staggering. And
Professor Kila, what do you think?
I think
is this a comment on government's handling of the thing?
Yes, it is. Yes, sadly it is. I mean, it's very sad. These numbers will have very sad numbers. But to the point Yemi Ademelokun was making, the moment they came up with the idea of the missing persons register, which I think is a very needed, fantastic idea because it gives identity and connection and connectiveness to the missing people, my take has always been, don't let government do it. Let the people go and do it themselves straight away. For 2 very simple reasons. Anything that is bureaucratic tends to be pulled down in the sand of processes and laws and commas and semicolons that never goes on. Number 2 is that I saw immediately that if we do an effective and efficient register of missing people, it will be an embarrassment to the government. So there is no real interest to keep showing that more and more people are missing. The register for missing people in a society like Nigeria is done by the civil society that holds the government's fire near the feet near the fire to say, look, these people are missing, what do we do about them? So my take is that civil society should go ahead and do it. And they should just dislocate all the forces possible, recruit volunteers, partner with like-minded societies, and try to fund it themselves. And that way, they will then force government to do that. And I think we had a forum where this was discussed. I was a minority voice, but I'm very strong about this idea. Like, it's not a government thing. It should be by people.
Yeah, but Gomez, what do you think of this whole idea about, the Boko Haram insurgents, the terrorists, seemingly more motivated, if we may use that phrase, than, the Nigerian military?
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to agree with everybody that's spoken here that this should be a national disgrace. We shouldn't be even looking at things like this and just even think that we're Nigerians, because as Nigerians, we shouldn't be accepting standards like this where our citizens are missing. That's bad aside. What you're saying about the Boko Haram being motivated, the reason why I think they're very motivated, they have a focus on where they want to get to, and they have a focus on how they want to get there. So they are really motivated. Unlike the military, who are just being paid. That's why I want to support him, that we should we should privatize it.
Privatize the military?
No. The action.
mindset.
Oh, stop.
No, but I think, but to the point what the government is making, the reason why they focus is because they're non-government organization. Boko Haram is a non-government organization. They're not bogged down.
No, it's a terrorist organization.
Yes, but it's not governmental.
And you should understand that when ideology is fueling something.
Yes, they have a reason.
They have a reason why they're doing this.
But the military do not need ideology, they need discipline. You see, to the point Rumela Bachi was
And
making,
equipment.
this is a sign of a failed state. The essence of a state is monopoly of force that is legitimate and that is superior. So we have a state whose force is superior but is not clearly legitimate and is not clearly superior.
Anymore.
And that is a failed state. The state must have a force that is superior and that is legitimate. Once one of those two things are missing, there is trouble.
But the only icing,
There's an icing on the cake.
is that
Is that even a cake?
yes, is that at least the government has thought it fit to now create a ministry for humanitarian affairs. Which
that's good. That's a good one.
Yes, which will deal with these things. And I
like that.
expect, from the CV of the lady that is in charge, it seems impressive.
I argue you don't need a ministry, but anyway, go ahead.
Exactly.
But I agree. But at least it's still better than when there was nothing coordinating it.
But how would it be better when the fundamentals are wrong?
Yes.
So the office of the VP was coordinating it because the intervention, whatever the office was there.
Yes,
so it's not the lack of office, and we know that. We can create a zillion offices.
No. You see, the office of the VP it's an amorphous office that deals with so much.
I think the point
now
is clear.
you have something that is interventionist just for that.
Made the point.
Yes.
Clearly, the responsibility of the state, the fact that the fight against terrorism remains a continuing challenge, and we still need to do a lot more, on all sides in Nigeria, both government and the people themselves. And then, of course, I don't think it's a thing that makes anybody happy.
Exactly.
That Boko Haram is still so
thinking
strong.
about them. Yeah.
But let's take another subject. The Presidential Election Petition Tribunal on Wednesday upheld President Muhammadu Buhari's re-election. The tribunal held that Atiku Abubakar and the PDP have failed to discharge the burden of proof of the allegation of non-qualification of President Buhari to contest the February 23rd general election. Atiku had told the tribunal to nullify Buhari's election and declare him the authentic winner of the election. Delivering judgment, Justice Mohammed Garba held that evidence before the court shows that Buhari obtained Cambridge West African Examination Council certificate. Garba added that it has been established that a candidate is not required under the Electoral Act to attach his certificate to his Form CF-001 before a candidate is adjudged to have the requisite qualification to contest the election. The tribunal also held that technological facilities like card readers, transmission of election results via server were strange to the country's laws. Now, that's the issue. And, this has been quite a big conversation in the course of the week. Well, you are a lawyer. What do you think of the judgment? At least this time around, this is not a case that has been determined on the ground of technicalities. This is a case that has been determined on its merit.
On the facts.
But I myself refrain from making extensive comments on it because I say, look, the standard practice is that you must read the judgment before you begin to speak 19 to a dozen on it. But at least we have some of the highlights in the public domain.
That's what I was just
and it was live on television.
That's right.
It was live.
It was extensive, like you said. But I begin to wonder what kind of violence that judgment will do to our jurisprudence. Because, if we start taking the issues, the silent issues one by one, you would see that we have a problem. Now, let's even leave all this certification stuff for the first time.
Chike, if you could hold your thoughts there, we'll take a short break, commercial break, and then when we return, you can continue with the analysis.
Okay,
we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me are Chike Ogia, to my immediate left, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State, Professor Anthony Kila, Director, Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies, Wale Gomez, Public Affairs Analyst, and of course, our own Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director. Enough is enough. Before we went on break, Chike, you were commenting
So I said,
on the judgment in the Buhari case.
Let's leave the issue of the certification. We'll come back to that. The main thrust of this, as far as I'm concerned, of the petition were twofold. One, the overvoting and irregularities that were done nationwide.
No, there were 5 grounds.
Yes. No, I'm just saying, of course I know. I'm just looking at it as my two major
The
ones.
two that
Now,
aligns with the
those ones,
expected
how
judgment.
did the court handle them? What evidence was adduced? What is the new legal standards for bringing out evidence now that can hold water? These are the questions that have arisen from this judgment, that can hold water for you to show you have shown enough credible evidence nationwide to prove that, there was indeed electoral malpractices, irregularities, overvoting, undervoting, underage voting, and all the things we saw. How come none of that could be proven? That, to my mind, I think is the first thing we should look at that judgment. Then the second thing also, and paramount to what has happened, is, of course, like you said, the issue of all the situations we looked at was the general, what certificate was tendered, at what time was it tendered. The Minister for Information says, oh, sorry, the man can't find the certificate, we should forget about it. Meanwhile, the court holds that no problem, even, he has been a former head of state, and the fact that he has sworn an affidavit, that suffices. So have we now, like I said, also put a situation where an affidavit is superior to a certificate? These are all the kind of things we'll be looking at. So, they are just so, as far as I'm concerned, yes, the judgment was thorough, well thought out. It took 8 hours to deliver and all that.
Very boring.
Yeah, but what?
That's another issue, Chike.
What
Couldn't they have just given the summary judgment and say we will provide the reasons
Can I just say
Yes,
quickly on
but
this
well,
judgment?
I cannot fault my.
Oh, I
lordship.
can. Let me.
Yes,
Don't worry.
Yes, in terms
Leave
of,
that to me.
No, you can fault
Yes, let
his
me
lordship,
gladly
but his
float your
lordship can be
for you.
flawed, but
Your lordships are boring. Let's tell them very clearly.
Okay,
Your
go
lordship held the nation on TV for hours. That was one of the second time in my life where I do not blame people for sleeping off.
In court.
An important
Counsel, we
place.
saw counsel.
But you would sleep. You would doze off. They even did very well. There was no chewing gum passed in that court, and they were standing up in a very tedious, monotonous voice, and they were not showing the person.
No, you can't.
That is analog. You don't do that in 2019.
They are the
anymore.
lordship.
That is
You can't see the faces.
Well, they should get a better voice or something and do summary when
Maybe
they do
they can
their
allow
thing.
you to read it.
The only other time I've not blamed people for sleeping was when we had a mass in Latin. You can understand. And listen, is as what is having a mass celebrated in Latin. So they need to change that. The other thing that needs to be said is the lawyers themselves. You don't want to blame your lordship, let's blame your brothers-in-law. Mm-hmm. I hope that Atiku and others like him, when they're going forward in cases like this next time, they should do
Better prepared.
no win, no fee.
Yes.
What's that in America they do?
Okay.
Where if they don't win, they don't pay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Because truly, some of these things could have been seen through. And maybe those lawyers were not real stakeholders in the matter.
Yep.
They just sat down in a very long case and people just went around it. I personally think the certificate thing is lawyers have pushed people to it. It's a non-starter. Because in reality, I'm not sure Barry has a certificate anymore. Because the way this thing has been so difficult to prove.
Yes.
They push people like me to doubt. But one thing is clear.
No, the Constitution does not insist on a certificate.
It doesn't, but it is on
a school certificate
or
its
equivalent.
equivalent.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And
in
it's equivalent
interpretation
in
And your
section,
brothers,
Work
the two of you,
experience.
and your
It
brothers
is-
on the bench, or where are they? The lawyers are not on the bench. There's nowhere behind.
The bar.
The lawyers are at the bar.
At the bar, they missed that beat in the bar.
For clarity,
To
for
go
clarity.
on that.
Can
Which of the bars are you referring to?
Hey, they do.
Go ahead.
For clarity, the law says that you must have been, we must have studied up to WAEC level.
Or equivalent.
Or equivalent.
Yes.
He did not say prove. I think there's a lacuna in that thing.
Yes.
He did not say provide your
No,
certificate.
you don't even need to provide it because the Constitution
It says it.
No, the Constitution clearly states
The equivalent
it's
is the word.
equivalent, and the equivalent is described.
The
Work
equivalent.
experience, blah 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 blah.
It's
So
very
if you
clear.
use all of that,
Okay,
it's
can
a
I make a
non-starter.
suggestion?
Yes.
I mean, the whole idea of a judgment like this is what it adds to our jurisprudence.
Yes.
Should we expect a situation whereby someday somebody will say, look, we should review the Constitution, and the minimum qualification for anybody who aspires to be
degree.
president of Nigeria should be a university degree?
First degree.
Absolutely.
If you are, is that desirable?
First degree.
And not
And not equivalent.
I don't give
Yes.
it.
If you ask
That is what it does.
A university degree, even if it is from Igbo
Proven by the
a
certificate.
certified university.
No, if you ask me, I think this is the greatest fallout of this judgment.
Yeah.
The fact that we still have an opportunity for a massive judicial review
But
by
absolutely.
the Supreme Court. And I expect
but
them...
PDP said
Hold
they
on.
would appeal,
No,
aren't
they
they?
would, certainly. Even
Oh,
if
they
it's
should
just
do
for
no
our
win, no fee.
jurisprudence. Even if it's for our jurisprudence. Because like you rightly said, I expect that from the judgment of the Supreme Court,
Yeah.
then a major overhaul of our electoral act should
Has
be
to go
undertaken.
on.
I agree with you. And you know what?
So it should be an all-encompassing thing.
I totally
because
agree with
there's
you.
just
I
too much
totally agree
lacuna
with you.
Can I say
in
this,
our
though?
laws right now. And that is why the president refused to sign that
You see,
electoral
he
bill.
holds
So that
himself-
we
I knew that you were going
we
to
had
get the
all these
president.
loose ends everywhere.
Now that the president
And
is legal, let me defend
everybody,
him.
and everybody has exploited it and taken it to their advantage. That is fine. As far as I'm concerned, 2019 is gone, but we need to tighten these laws, make them certain, let us know what we're expecting, and then that is the only way we can clean up our electoral system to be able to have future elections in Nigeria.
But
Can I say this,
Yemi,
please?
just before you make a comment, maybe you take this along. I mean, Governor Wike of Rivers State has congratulated President Buhari.
Yes.
He's the only PDP member who has come forward to do so. Former Vice President Atiku, I'm not too sure he has said anything.
No, he hasn't.
Except he said something and I missed it.
Yes.
The PDP says, you know, the party will go all the way to the Supreme Court. Don't you think that, Vice President Atiku has some other option? Instead of going to court, can he just congratulate President Buhari and say, as a statesman, let's move on?
I think he does have the option to do that, but it's also his prerogative not to choose not to do it for whatever reason, because he wants to go to the Supreme Court. But the point I wanted to make is that if we're making
Jesus Christ.
if we're making the case for certificate, the more other bit of the news of the election for me, the irregularities, the overvoting and all of that got buried in server issues for certificate.
Yeah.
So we're not even having that conversation around what exactly happened with the elections and what can be learned. And for me, I think that's one of the disadvantages of how PDP chose to play its, chose to present its case. Because now nobody, because there are clear issues that PDP could have brought forth around the irregularities around the elections. And that's not news. It's certificate and server that's the news. And to your point, I think he can do that, but it's also his prerogative to go to the Supreme Court if, to use Dr. Killer's word, they can do no win, no fee, for example, or there's another aspect of this thing that they plan to bring forward to help their case, which I'm not sure.
In less than a minute, I think it's wrong to congratulate the president after a victory in court. The congratulations, tradition states, is after a clear sportsmanship in which the people decided. The essence of congratulating is to say that I understand the people have chosen you. Not that I suspect you're a cheat. I suspect victory is not yours because the court has given it to you, therefore congratulations. There's no other way to put it. Wike is wrong in congratulating
You say Wike is wrong?
Yes.
But Wike says that in actual fact, many PDP governors
Go
go
at
at night
to do it.
To fraternize with the president.
So those ones are, they wrong at night and he's wrong at the day.
Can I speak?
They're thieves.
It's my party, isn't it?
Yes,
So let's leave politics. We are talking about the law here. We are not talking about politics. You know, Wike and the PDP can be playing politics. That's not my issue. My issue is that, just like you rightly said, the fact, that's what I wanted to say. when I spoke earlier on. I wanted to talk about that server. You see, those are the things that are important to me, and those are the reasons why we have to go on appeal. Not because I care about really at this juncture who wins or who doesn't win, but we need to tidy up our judicial system. What now is the situation of the server in Nigeria's Electoral Act? The PDP says there was a server. The government, the INEC said there was no server. INEC was even like an interested party.
No, let me, in INEC's defense. What are we saying? No. In INEC's defense.
They're just too much.
No. I will say this very clearly.
Yes.
There is a server.
Yes.
And I'll say that INEC can contradict that.
Yes.
No,
But what
but,
INEC...
I mean, you are not INEC.
I'm saying, that's why I said INEC can contradict me if they want. I'm saying it.
Yes.
And I'm very clear about it.
Observer,
However, what INEC said they were responding to was the particular server PDP said they had. So PDP said they had a server with this particular configurations, and they said we don't. So they were not saying we don't have servers at all.
No, but didn't the court say that the
there was
reports
no-
were, transmitted manually?
Yes.
But they were transmitted manually.
So what is the server doing?
The court
They
said
didn't say they were not. No. They didn't
irrelevant.
exactly. They didn't say they were not transmitted by server. They just said that it's not known to our electoral
That
act,
is not recognized.
which is true.
And to the point Chike was making here, it is important to note here that we need a general reform of our electoral law, act, and the judiciary, because if the constitution, like most things in Nigeria, were written today by majority of the demographic of Nigeria, they would recognize server and they would talk about digital way of doing it.
Of course.
The problem we
E-voting,
have is that
electronic
our
voting.
laws, like the people that govern Nigeria, do not reflect majority of Nigerians. They are stuck in the
All
past.
the 21st century.
Or the 21st century either. They're stuck in the past. That is why they spend hours to deliver judgment.
even
That is why
our
they spend hours to
constitution.
count votes. And that is why they spend hours not recognizing the most common minimal way of communicating and operating in the 21st century, which is electronic means. It is a disgrace that we're saying that is not
Well,
valid.
I think a lot more will still come out of this, particularly when the matter gets to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court perhaps will reach certain decisions on some of the core issues that have implications for our electoral system, for our democratic process, and also for our jurisprudence. And many lawyers are saying, yes, I mean, let's play this out. Let this go to the Supreme Court, and let us see what the Supreme Court says,
wouldn't they?
and whether this will end up at the end of the
But
day.
there's no fee.
No win, no fee.
That's up to Atiku now.
Let's see.
That's up to
I don't know
Atiku
whether
not
your
to
fee proposition.
Chike won't
I don't know
accept
whether
that.
That is the killer proposal
in
for
Nigeria.
them.
Then let's take a short break. We'll go on another break, and then when we return, we'll take on the subject of the return of Nigerians from South Africa on the basis of the xenophobic attacks in that country. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Now, ladies and gentlemen, although I should say gentlemen because we don't have ladies in journalism.
I'm not a journalist.
Okay.
You are
So you are
sitting
correct.
as a journalist now.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's take another topic. Nearly 200 nationals were lifted to Nigeria from South Africa because of increasing xenophobic attacks in South Africa. The Nigerian nationals arrived at the Lagos International Airport on September the 11th. The Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari on Monday ordered the immediate evacuation of nationals, Nigerians, from South Africa following anti-migrant attacks. Scores of shops owned by Nigerians were destroyed in the wake of the violence. Meanwhile, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa turned a hostile reception at the late President Robert Mugabe's funeral around by apologizing to all Africans for the recent flare-ups in xenophobic violence in his country. Well,
I hold him responsible.
you hold Ramaphosa responsible.
Yes. Why is he apologizing now? When he was campaigning,
the one that did.
Yes, he set the tone for this. But be that as it may, you know, it's a pity that all that seems to be coming out of Nigeria is just stories of, horror. Because what has just happened to our people, it's just like what we talked about, what was going on in the Northeast. It's horrible, where people would now get up and leave their life's work, and have to just run for their dear lives because they are being slaughtered like rams on the fields in South Africa. I mean, it's so wrenching to think that this is the same South Africa that we did everything for.
But Chike, if you just hold on, let's listen to that apology.
Okay.
You know, maybe we'll be able to put it on air, and then we'll listen to his exact words.
In the past 2 weeks, we as South Africans have been going through a challenging period. We have had acts of violence erupting in some parts of our country, some of which was directed at nationals from other African countries. This has led, as here you are responding to the deaths and injuries of a number of people, some of whom were nationals from other countries, and the majority were South Africans. I stand before you as a fellow African to express my regret and to apologize for what has happened in our country. What has happened in South Africa goes against the principles of the unity of the African people that President Mugabe and President Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, and the great leaders of our continent stood for. That South Africans...
Yes, so back to you, Chike. Are you saying that the apology is not enough?
Well, I don't know.
We should still keep insisting that we help South Africans in the struggle against apartheid, even when we know that the generation that is behind these xenophobic attacks is a very young generation without a sense of history.
Well, I don't think that disconnect will be that much in this short time. Yeah, it seems long, but it's not that long. It just shows that the leadership in South Africa is obviously not connecting with its people. And you say, I'm sorry to say, but this is why they always say this thing about the black man. You know, because what we see, as far as I'm concerned, it's not even xenophobia. I think it's Afrophobia, because why are they not attacking the white people? The people that kept them in chains for so long.
No, but they are attacking Indians, they are attacking Italians,
Chinese.
they are attacking the Chinese. You know, so this attempt to change the phrase.
Let me come here, Chika.
Peripherals.
Let me tell you something. Let's go deeper into the root of this. And from my own, I was in South Africa about 2-3 months ago for the first time, and I noticed something very, very funny.
Just 2-3 months.
That was the first time I ever went there.
Maybe you
for the first time.
For the first
Where
time.
have you been?
No, it's all right. I was in America. Sorry. Well, let me tell you one thing I noticed when I walked in. When I went to Cape Town,
Yes.
and I found the potentials in that area, but the whites have dominated them. They have I always have this theory that the best way to bully a bully is to bully the bully. They have turned the South African nationals into a punching bag. Huh? No, black South Africans. Okay. They've turned them into punching bag. And let me tell you where I'm going. That's what I'm. It's still there. A friend of mine said that he went to a church, and he found out that they left the black people at the back and the whites were in front. Now, they wanted to give a communion, and the Catholic, the priest, refused to give the black man the communion. But that's not even where I'm going. Where I'm going is this. Now, there's a dichotomy between the whites and the black. Period. There's a fight between them in terms of acceptance of the black by the white.
But what we have before us is not black on white or white on black.
Where I'm going is that they have been battered. So the water goes to the area of least resistance, and that's the reason why they're picking on the of Nigerians and other people.
Look,
it's just
to put it more succinctly, it's just a battle of poor people against poor people. It's not because they're white or black.
So it's a class war.
It's a class war of the desperados, the desperates of the world fighting themselves. But you see, there's something we need to say, and I think this is a kind of clip for people who study these things. Everybody consumes daily affairs, but some of us look at what goes beyond daily consumption, what's the big thing, we call it, the historical thing, something you can write in a textbook. You know what this thing tells us? Two things we take out of this South African experience. One is that the trajectory of xenophobia is now the same all over the world. What they're saying in South Africa, the anti-immigration theory that the far right says in Europe, America, everywhere, the same language.
Particularly Italy.
Yes,
Hungary.
Hungary, everywhere it's the same.
Austria.
Yes.
So, and some of us were saying this, and they were calling us names. And it's never a racial thing; it's an economical thing.
Yes.
You just pick on people that think of taking your thing.
Yes.
Now, the second thing that this tells us, that is a global thing, a Nigerian issue, is, and here I say this first, that contrary to what people think, I think this administration has actually handled this well.
Very well.
It's just that because they're slow, my ex used to say one thing.
Sorry, how exactly have they handled it?
I'll tell you what, because of the cards they had on the table to play with.
Okay, which?
There are 4 things that determine international relationships. By the way, the problem South African is having, you say this president started it, but the act of killing, burning, or bullying people were done by individuals. It's like saying you're holding the president of Nigeria accountable for the bad driving style of a driver in Lagos. Those are people doing that. But you see, in international relationships, there are 4 things that determine the dynamics of relationship. One is political power. The other is economical power. The third is political connectiveness. And the fourth is noble cause. Of all these 4 things, Nigeria is strong on noble cause, i.e. they attacked our people, i.e. we did something for them in the past, emotional thing. But noble cause is always the weakest in international relationship. What matters is military power. We don't have it. Nigeria needs to wake up. We can't threaten South Africa. When people are saying we should do more, we couldn't have done nothing. We don't have economic power.
Right.
We can't sanction them. We can't pull out investments. The investments you have, they are dodgy. They are by people who have looted money and they have no brand.
No, you cannot prove that.
I can.
You cannot.
Okay, I won't prove it. But why people are not proving anything these days, you want me to prove. Leave me. Now, I can say it. Leave it and prove it or not. So we have no big brand. We have Nigerians who own houses there, who go on holiday, but we have no MTN. We have no Nigerian brand that stands there that they can face. And then we do not
Like
have...
the MTN
Like, yes,
coming
we
to
don't have
Nigeria.
the
We don't have that.
Like ShopRite.
We've not
Yes.
exported anything.
Yes.
And the third thing is that we're not even a rallying point. That is the
Connectiveness.
connectiveness. We're not even a rallying point to say that if you touch Nigeria, you'll be in trouble with the AU. That is what NATO was based on. We don't even have the gravitas in West Africa to say that...
Or a president that can speak and
that if you touch Nigeria, the whole of Senegal, Ghana will go with them. So we lack that. What that tells us is that those who can, those who should go back to rethink what is our position in the world? What do we do about it? All we have left is the past glory of saying that we are the biggest nation in the world. We're not.
And we help South Africa.
That is not
Where
the
Nigeria
truth.
stands in
Yes,
geopolitics.
in geopolitics.
But I mean, what's your take on how the Nigerian government has handled this so far? I mean, the returnees, they are here now. The government has given them 40,000
MTN and stuff.
to buy recharge
Airtime.
cards. They've given them SIM cards. Ironically, they've given them MTN cards. They are giving them 9 gigabytes of data. They are also giving 10,000 for transportation. And the government, through the Diaspora Commission, led by Abike Dabiri-Erewa, is also saying that any one of them who is interested in setting up a business will get a soft loan.
Bank of Industry.
I think this is commendable, but I don't know what you think.
I think yes and no. And I think part of it is what you said. If we look at what they had to play with, then yes. But if we just look at it in terms of what it means to be a Nigerian and the value in that. So they got patriotic when they were coming, singing
The national anthem.
Hallelujah. The plane that went to pick them up was by a private individual, not the Nigerian government, not Nigeria.
Yeah, because the Nigerian government doesn't have an
because we don't have, which we squandered the opportunity
They came
to
back
do
in
that.
peace.
They came back, and we have a Nigerian brand in terms of a telecoms company in Glo. Yeah. So the fact that sometimes, so for me, one of some of the things that how we pay attention to our messaging and
terrible.
our posturing, it's really just really bad.
It's not
and I think till today,
it's awful,
that the president of Nigeria, given what has happened to Nigerians in South Africa, given the fact that you had returnees, I think a second batch is either coming back today or tomorrow, that Mr. President is yet, amongst other things that he has not commented on, to speak to Nigerians or speak to the returnees directly, I think still just reinforces his disconnectedness from his people.
No, I don't see that as a problem. Because the president issued a statement.
Well, it's a piece of paper.
The president sent a special envoy.
It's a piece of
The
paper.
president got briefed by the special envoy, and steps have been taken.
Maybe there are protocols.
No, Mr.
Maybe there are protocols that he needs to follow.
You're entitled. No, not at all. You're entitled to your opinion. I've stated mine.
It's a very wrong opinion.
I'm giving information.
It's very bad
I'm very
information.
aware of all that information, but that still does not negate.
It is correct, but it's not useful.
Professor Kia, use it for me, Yemi, where I agree totally with what you said, but I have accepted it. You see, I've come to a place of acceptance.
That's who he is.
Yes, that this is how he operates. And like you said, he has sent his aid, they've issued statements, they've done all they have done. And all
He had followed the protocol.
But I want to believe that, like you rightly said, what I just thought about now that makes me feel even doubly bad is that, did you say MTN airtime was given to them?
Yes.
Okay, you prefer Glow.
Glow.
Okay,
That's brand Nigeria.
On that note, gentlemen, Chike, Gomez, Yemi, and Professor Kela, we'll take a short break. And then when we come back, we'll take on another subject. We'll be right back. This is still ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show, here on the Arise News channel. Welcome back to ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me are Chike Siogea, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State, Professor Anthony Kila, Director, Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies, Wale Gomez, Public Affairs Analyst, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Now, let's go to Europe. EU officials have rejected Prime Minister Boris Johnson's claim that a huge amount of progress is being made in Brexit talks, as Jean-Claude Juncker warned that time is running out. Juncker, who will stand down as European Commission President on 31st October, is expected to ask Johnson to spell out his ideas for replacing the Irish backstop when the pair meet over lunch in Luxembourg on Monday. Johnson told the Mail earlier that there were real signs of movement in Berlin, Paris, and Dublin on getting rid of the backstop, the persistent stumbling block to a Brexit agreement, saying a huge amount of progress has been made. The EU officials involved in talks with Johnson's envoy, David Frost, dismissed his offbeat account, including a spate of recent reports from London analysts, that a deal was becoming more likely, with all of this dismissed as completely wrong by one senior EU official. Juncker said the EU knew what the British did not want, but we're still waiting for alternative backstop proposals. Well, Professor Killer, I'd like to start with you.
Yes.
I mean, we're still on this issue of Brexit. Yes. After all that vote on the anti-no deal Brexit bill and the royal assent given by the Queen, and then the case in the High Court led by, presided over by the Master of the Rolls, and then the other case in Scotland at the Court of Sessions, which took a different position from the High Court. And then, of course, around this issue of whether there's any real discussion going on, you've had some, secretaries taking a walk, including Joe Johnson, the brother of Boris Johnson, and including the Works and Pensions Secretary. As well. So, but here, you still have Prime Minister Boris Johnson saying that something is still likely, particularly as the DUP, the Democratic Union Party, is shifting a little bit, and any hope that the Irish backstop will be addressed, which is the main bone of contention.
And to add to that, they're also leading party figures, historical and present figures, who have taken a walk, as you put it, away from Boris as well.
Well, the Tory rebels, 21 of them have left. And it's because those ones had their whip removed.
Their whip removed. But there are also some key figures like Michael Heseltine and John Major and some very big names are saying this is not right. Three things.
David Cameron as well.
David Cameron as well, and who's, we'll call him a labo. You see, three things needs to be said about this situation. This is what happens generally when you mix international affairs with national affairs. With domestic policy and international policy, when they're so close, so tight, crazy stuff happens. And that is what is going on. Because on one side, Boris Johnson is looking at the polls. He's feeling that he's popular with the people because he's being populistic. And I use this in a very technical term. He's going to bypass Parliament, he's going to bypass the establishment and create a connection with the people to say that you said you don't want Brexit, the establishment is trying to force Brexit on us. Let's just leave. and I'm your champion.
That's right.
And he's backing it up with the polls. What does the poll? The poll doesn't say he's winning, but the polls show there's no alternative. The Labour Party is not doing that well to threaten
The
him.
polls show that the Conservative Party is ahead by 21%.
Yes, but when you distribute the number of seats, it's not a wide margin. So it's still dying.
There could be mergers.
There could be, but there could be margins or there could be hung parliament. But what it shows that the Prime Minister still holds the ace in his hand. But, and there goes the second point, the personality of Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson he has a classic background like myself. He has a sense of history. He's looking at himself as the reincarnation, doesn't say it,
Of Churchill.
of Churchill. And what he really wants to do is to, like a bulldog, take on an unpopular situation or position, push it, and then win and make history.
Well, why should Brexit be unpopular? Was it not a popular vote that brought about Brexit?
Yeah, it was.
This
And
is-
this is what happens.
Given the number of people
It was
that
only
voted.
51%.
The thing is that the Brexit decision was not taken by an overwhelming majority.
Yeah, it wasn't.
One. And number two, the consequences of Brexit is not what was
Intended.
previewed, was
Was so-
intended.
no, was so-
It was not
was marketed.
fully
People.
explained.
Wasn't
Even
was
Cameron
marketed.
This is a
said,
situation whereby
They didn't think it through.
no,
whether
Cameron,
October 15
Yes.
is acceptable or not, I mean, House of Commons has already rejected
Yes,
that.
yes.
Where there will be an election, in any case, in November, and where that election will be either a reaffirmation of the 2016 referendum or a rejection.
Or rejection of it. That is, you see, that is the problem with the alternative. EU says Britain, through Boris Johnson, has told us what they don't want, but they've not told us what they want. The same thing is happening in the British Parliament and in British politics. The Parliament has said they don't want Boris Johnson's stance, but they cannot provide an alternative. The alternative they could pick, why? Because the rebels in the Tory, the Conservative Party, do not want Jeremy Corbyn as the Prime Minister.
Also, the One Nation Caucus.
And they don't want him. So, but you know what could defeat Boris? What they don't want to do is to provide another Conservative as Prime Minister, and they will do a government of national unity. Someone like Kenneth Clark.
it's too old.
Everyone, it's not too old. It was just brighter than yes. It's not. And it's for a short time anyway.
But he's experienced.
He's experienced, the father of the Parliament, and he's very brilliant.
He was by
I
oneself.
personally think, Prof, that with that,
Yes.
they are still running away from the problem.
No, they won't run away from the problem. You know how they deal
The
with the problem.
problem
And
is
that's what I'm
simple.
going to.
Are you going forward or are you going backward?
Yeah, that is what
with
we're
Brexit?
saying. With the new kind of leader who is clearly elected to negotiate Brexit, they will now take their
different
time, dynamics to go and negotiate it.
Prof,
Boris Johnson has no intention to negotiate.
Okay,
Yeah,
Prof,
but the
isn't that...
opposition leaders are saying he cannot even negotiate anything outside the framework that has
That
been
is given
put
to
in
it.
place
Yes.
by the Antino deal.
And that is why he's running
That's
away
what-
from Parliament. He wants to force them. You see what Boris... He's taking a gamble. What he wants to do is he wants to force them towards a fait accompli.
Yes.
To push them to get to that date of 31 objective, and nobody has a choice.
No, but the law says you should seek an extension.
The law says so. He's trying to
31st
disobey
January
that law.
2020.
That is why, again, the gamble, Boris Johnson, he's trying to push for election rather than negotiate.
right.
Because if he can get an election by October 15 and he wins, then he bypasses that law.
Anyway, okay, we'll keep watching the melodrama in the United Kingdom.
And hope he gets a better
Let's just take
hairdresser.
one other subject for just about 3 minutes. Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning of Nigeria, says the Federal Executive Council has approved an increase in value-added tax from 5% to 7.5% and not 7.2%, which was announced earlier.
Okay.
In a statement on Friday, Yunus Abdullahi, spokesman of the minister, said the proposed increase was from 5% to 7.5% and is based on the recommendation of the Presidential Technical Advisory Committee. He added that the committee in its report recommended the increase in the VAT rate from 5% to 7.5%, adding that the prevailing VAT rate in Nigeria was still about half the African average. Abdullahi said the VAT exempts food, medicines, and other basic necessities, thereby reducing the economic burden on the poor. According to industry experts, the VAT increase, if properly enforced, forms part of the fiscal consolidation strategy for the country. Well, Gomez, what do you think? This is consumption tax. What are the implications for purchasing power parity? And, do we really need to put a consumption tax, an additional tax, increased tax, in order to be able to pay the new national minimum wage, which seems to be the issue. And government is looking for money.
Let's look at the reasons for having VAT in your system is to create income for the government to run its daily needs. And with what they've done now, they have created what will come out to be a cost pool inflation, because people are going to be adding that to increasing pricing, and it's going to have a negative effect. It could even end up to creating a bad situation for Nigeria in terms of the economy.
For me, you know, this.
Or if you ask me, some people have said they should tax rich people like this.
No, but already VAT, if you ask me, VAT
are not tax the poor people.
No, VAT is a luxury tax, whether we like it or not. So, in other words,
No,
right?
because
Because, but the only thing, I'm just saying in a larger sense. You always look at things so narrowly, Prof. But the point I'm making, the point I'm making.
I look at
is
it precisely. Okay,
fine. The point I'm making is that if VAT, I think they said 2.7 trillion or what, they've done the computation of what it will give the country.
To bring,
that is fine, especially like you said, if it is what would make us meet our minimum wage, because we need to trickle down to the people.
They have a likely inflationary impact.
Yeah, so that is why the people in charge of the economy should take care of that.
You take care of that?
Yes.
They can't.
So then it becomes a spiraling.
A consumption tax, and this is why some of us insist on being precise, is a tax that is transferred to consumers.
Yes.
So that even if they pass the minimum wage, the minimum wage earners have lost value of that money they're going to spend.
Yes.
Because everything they spend, because people who take their money, like Wale Gomez, only thing he sells to... I know. Because where the money goes to, he will now increase their prices in all his industries and companies.
So what do? We go and borrow some more money?
No, we have to devise ways. You see,
But you said nobody can devise anything. Okay, go ahead.
No, they can't manage a bad thing that they've created themselves.
Me and gentlemen, we've got to go. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll have another, exciting time next week. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.